Hello. Thank you for visiting the Other Woman and Man Stories channel. Don't forget to subscribe. And here we go. Jennifer got married twice in her life. The first time she got married when she was 22 years old. She met Anthony at her older brother's 30th birthday party, which was held at a small restaurant near their hometown. Until that day, Jennifer had never seen Anthony in person, only heard funny stories about her brother's college roommate from her brother. Anthony immediately caught Jennifer's eye. He was a tall, handsome guy with dark hair and a mischievous smile. He was her first real crush. It seemed like Anthony was Jennifer's whole world. So when after 4 months of dating he proposed to her at sunset during a picnic by the lake, Jennifer said yes without hesitation. The smiling 25-year-old man seemed like the perfect husband to her, and she dreamed of spending her whole life with him. A year after their wedding, which took place in a small church in their hometown, they had a son named Tommy. When the boy turned 5 months old, Jennifer couldn't take it anymore and left her husband, taking the baby with her. The rose-colored glasses came off, and she realized Anthony was not the man she could build a future with. Despite all his charm and appeal, the young man turned out to be completely unfit for family life. Anthony was lazy and, as it turned out, didn't think he should help his wife with the child. He lost his job at the factory where they both worked and spent whole days at home watching TV. They lived only on the unemployment benefits Anthony collected and the modest child allowance. Jennifer packed up her things and left with her son to her parents' house. When Tommy turned 3, friends introduced her to their single buddy, Kyle. At first, Jennifer didn't pay much attention to him. Yes, the man was nice-looking, well-off, but back then he seemed cold and uptight to her. But Kyle really liked Jennifer. He constantly invited her on walks and dates. Later, when she introduced Kyle to Tommy and saw how well they got along, she became fully convinced that Kyle was the man she could build a strong family with. There wasn't the passion between them that Jennifer had in her first marriage. It was a calm, measured relationship without emotional outbursts or scandals. On her 27th birthday, Kyle surprised her. He rented a hot air balloon and proposed right there high up in the sky. Such a romantic gesture from the calm and reasonable Kyle surprised and touched Jennifer. She couldn't say no. And so she became the wife of a successful businessman, the owner of a small consulting firm. Kyle himself offered Jennifer to quit her low-paying job because he didn't want his wife to work for nothing. She happily agreed to the offer, as she was exhausted after years of raising her son alone and having to support them both. Now she just wanted to rest for a bit. After the divorce from Anthony, Jennifer barely talked to him. He moved to another city to find a new job. He promised he would come back and buy his son anything he wanted. But years went by, and that never happened. But one evening, as Jennifer was driving home from daycare with her son, her phone rang. An unknown number appeared on the screen. "Hello, my beloved wife," she heard a familiar male voice. At first, Jennifer thought it was a prank, but then recognized Anthony's voice. Her ex-husband began to incoherently recount the news from recent years, where he had been and what jobs he worked, and said he had temporarily returned to their hometown and wanted to see his son. Jennifer understood she had no right to forbid the boy's own father from seeing him. They scheduled a meeting, and Jennifer hung up. When her ex-husband came to visit, she suddenly realized how much she missed him. Anthony had changed, grown more mature. He apologized for his behavior many years ago, saying he realized all his mistakes. Jennifer softened towards him. She watched Anthony play with their son in their new home, and her heart rejoiced that everything had turned out so well. Although she loved Kyle very much and believed her son was lucky to have such a caring stepfather, the real father was something completely different. Her ex-husband tried to come when Kyle wasn't home. He immediately told Jennifer he didn't want to meet him, and she accepted his decision. With each new meeting, Jennifer increasingly felt like she was still in love with Anthony. She began to reminisce more and more about the good times from their past, how they met, their dates, how they strolled around the city at night. The memories warmed her soul. One day before leaving, Anthony suddenly leaned over to his ex-wife and kissed her instead of a farewell hug. Jennifer felt that same feeling of being in love, dormant for many years, overcome her again. Over time, Kyle began to notice changes in Jennifer's attitude towards her ex-husband. He didn't like that they had started talking so often, but his wife assured him she was only doing it for their son's sake. One day, as Kyle was getting ready to go out, he discovered his expensive watch was missing. He clearly remembered putting it in his desk drawer in the study, but when he needed it, the watch wasn't there. Kyle's first thought was that one of the housekeepers they hired once a week turned out to be untrustworthy and stole the watch. For the first time, Kyle decided to use the surveillance cameras that were installed by the previous owner of the house. Until now, there was no need to review the footage. He decided to see who had entered the study in the last 2 weeks and try to determine when the theft occurred. Fast forwarding to the right date, Kyle began to watch closely. Here are the cleaners wiping down the desk and shelves in the office, but no one touches the desk drawers. After that, it's just him and his wife on the tape. But suddenly Kyle sees Anthony walk into the study, and not alone, with Jennifer. They kiss passionately, and then start taking their clothes off. Kyle fast-forwarded past the disgusting spectacle and saw Anthony, after Jennifer left the room, looking around furtively at the door, rummaging through the desk drawer where the watch was, and slipping it into his pocket. Then Kyle decided to check the cameras to see what was happening at their house now and saw that Anthony was at their place again in his absence. Kyle slammed the laptop shut in anger and rushed home, telling his secretary to cancel all meetings. It seemed to him that he was driving at the speed of light. At home, music was playing and there was a smell of cigarettes, a clear sign of Anthony's presence. Kyle burst into the bedroom, forcefully pushing the door open. He saw Jennifer and Anthony embracing on the bed. They were half undressed and clearly taken by surprise by his arrival. In a rage, Kyle ran up to Anthony and grabbed him by the collar, tearing him away from his wife. Anthony tried to break free, but the enraged Kyle punched him twice hard in the jaw. Jennifer screamed in fear, pleading with the men to stop fighting. She stood between them, pushing Kyle away from Anthony. "What a fool you are," Kyle yelled. "You brought your lover into our home. Cheat on me while I'm at work. As if that weren't enough, this jerk is also robbing us." Jennifer looked at Anthony in shock. He didn't even try to deny it or justify himself. Then it dawned on her that her husband was telling the truth. She demanded an explanation, but Anthony just laughed and left the room, throwing a couple insults over his shoulder. Jennifer burst into tears of resentment and began throwing everything she could get her hands on at Anthony's retreating back: pillows, slippers, books. She cursed him with everything she had for his betrayal. Kyle even found it a little funny how furious his wife became. He waited for her to drive out the unprincipled lover, and then waited for her explanation. But at first Jennifer was silent. She had nothing to say. Then through tears she tried to beg forgiveness, pleading with Kyle not to leave her. But he had already made up his mind. Even though Kyle had become attached to her son Tommy, who called him Dad, he could no longer live with an unfaithful wife. Besides, he dreamed of having his own children, and now he couldn't even think about having them with Jennifer. The couple got divorced. The house belonged to Kyle, so Jennifer and her son had to move out and rent an apartment. She wanted to return to her parents after the divorce, but Jennifer's father was against it. He was ashamed of his daughter's actions. Jennifer's father could not understand how she could betray a man who had accepted her with a child from another man and taken such good care of them. And all for a worthless ex-husband who also turned out to be a thief. The woman had to rent an apartment and periodically ask her mother or girlfriends to babysit Tommy while she worked as a waitress. The child's father didn't help her at all. All his promises turned out to be empty words. After Kyle caught him stealing the watch from the desk drawer, he filed a police report against Anthony. The ex-husband had to pay a hefty fine for the theft, and after that he disappeared from their lives again. Jennifer was left essentially alone with all the problems. In despair, she called Kyle several times asking for help. But he remained firm and resolute. He wanted nothing more to do with her after her infidelity. After some time, Jennifer got a job as a waitress at a small cafe. She tried very hard. The cafe owner, Mr. Johnson, noticed that the woman sometimes came to work with her son. She had no one to leave him with. He allowed her to take the boy into the back room where he could play. Mr. Johnson and his wife happily looked after the child, as they had no children of their own. Jennifer was very grateful for the support. In return, she baked pastries for the cafe and helped with bookkeeping. Over time, they became friends. One day, Mr. Johnson offered Jennifer to take out a loan and open her own cafe, and he was ready to help with startup capital and become her partner. She happily agreed. A year later, Jennifer opened a cozy cafe that quickly became popular thanks to her delicious homemade pastries. One day, Kyle, passing by, saw the sign Jennifer's and her smiling ex-wife in the window. Her son Tommy was bustling about beside her. Kyle was glad Jennifer had started a new life. As for Kyle, after the divorce, he felt depressed and lonely for some time. But he understood that he needed to move on. Kyle focused on work, spent a lot of time in the office, tried to keep busy. He wanted to achieve even greater success in business. A year later, Kyle met a young woman named Emily at a business conference. They immediately hit it off. Emily was smart, ambitious, and easy and interesting to talk to. 6 months after they met, Kyle proposed to Emily, and they got married. A year later, their daughter was born. Kyle was happy. He had a beloved wife and long-awaited child. He tried to devote as much time and attention to them as possible, despite his busy work schedule. Together with Emily, they bought a large house in an upscale neighborhood. Their daughter became the most important thing in Kyle's life, and Emily was a solid support all these years. So Kyle was able to find his happiness and build a strong family after his divorce from Jennifer. He never again remembered that story as something bad. On the contrary, Kyle was grateful to fate that everything had worked out the way it did. That's the story. Share your thoughts in the comments about this situation and the behavior of the spouses. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and be sure to like this video. It will greatly help promote the channel. Take care and have a wonderful day.